Okay, so I was scrolling YouTube and I saw this video. It's Zimbabwe, how not to run an economy. And the description says from trillion-dollar bills to extreme inequality. Let's look at some of Zimbabwe's failures in running an economy. I'm really curious. I haven't learned that much about Zimbabwe. I mean, this will be one of the negative things, I guess, but yeah, I'm excited to learn about this economic failure, I guess. I don't know. Let's see.
In this video, I'm going to be giving away $10 trillion to a random subscriber.
Oh my god.
Zimbabwe dollars, baby.
Holy.
We are not gay.
I've never watched any videos from this
First,
channel
let's look
before.
at modern Zimbabwe. Sitting in the rump of Africa, Zimbabwe is made up of these borders and sitting at a population of about 15 million on this rather boring piece of land. The nation does not produce a whole lot of anything. How do they make their money then? For 2/3 of the country, they don't really. They just farm, usually at the sustenance level. That means they're self-sufficient, right? No nation is really self-sufficient, not even you. So the rest of the nation can trade to make up that difference. But wait, Zimbabwe is a landlocked nation. They need to get through both South Africa and Mozambique through these rivers in order to ship their goods off. That is unless they move it by train.
That's terrible.
Needing to rely on these two countries plus Zambia or Botswana now. And African borders are notorious for corruption and usually a little extra side cash is given to the officer when crossing. Meh. Just think of it as a tariff.
So all along the way you have to pay everyone. Yeah,
so
that's
leads
bad.
to Zimbabwe having one of the lowest rates of trading per capita on earth. And
Hold on. Exports. Okay.
as we'll see later, they didn't keep great relations with any of their neighbors. Although if you included smuggling in their trade, the answer would be a lot higher. What could they possibly be smuggling? Marijuana? Meth? Heroin? Nah, more like flour, gold, and just a dash of cocaine. You might have heard it's because Zimbabwe is
We're going hard on Zimbabwe in this video.
one of the largest gold producers on earth. I mean, it makes
Oh
up half.
no. To me, that means that people are going to steal it and there's going to be lots of corruption. That's what
Their
that
exports.
means.
Of course they produce a ton of it, but no, the gold production is relatively small with only about 30 tons produced a year. That's about the weight of a humpback whale, or a dead humpback whale because they don't have any oceans in Zimbabwe. Real great exports, huh? What they do have instead is platinum, chromium, and some lithium. Mining is Zimbabwe's big thing. It's the whole reason it was colonized in the first place. Pretty much every other industry is too uncompetitive for Zimbabwe to fight even its neighbors in, so they export things like gold, diamonds, nickel, and some tobacco for good luck, and import things like everything. At least everything you need for a modern country. Food, energy, chemicals, vehicles, clothes, industrial supplies. I don't want to go on, especially
What is he?
since they still barely import anything. This low level of trade makes them so vulnerable to swings in the domestic market, which means if times are good, they're pretty good. And if times are bad, they get worse than most other nations do.
They probably also just have a lot of unrest because of that. Because when people have a bad economy, they get really stressed. And so
can't minimize any shocks with outside trade. Let's get to the blunders then. First mistake, these guys. Look how friendly they are. Just imagine being posted up with the boys in a foreign land. Only one issue, there are still these fellas living here, the Ndebele. So by the
typical story from all over the world, this is what's happened.
In the 1880s, there was an old African standoff. This is basically how it went. The British said, I want this land. Then the Portuguese came in and said, I want this land. Then the Boers came too and said, I want this land. And the Ndebele said, what the hell? This is my land.
Yeah, we're
so
living
the British
here.
told the king they'd give him guns and money if they could mine on the land. And after some thinking and debating, he said, you know what? Screw it. What's
Of course.
the worst that could happen?
The British Empire then took over the entire kingdom in a series of wars that killed tens of thousands of Ndebele. I guess that's how you say it. I don't know. The British in history, y'all caused some problems. Why is it the British most of the time in faraway history that have done these things?
Except the British didn't actually own this land. One guy named Cecil Rhodes did, and they didn't believe in him.
God did.
Because now all of this land is called Rhodesia, and he's ruling with his divine right to take all the gold from his land. The mining operations actually failed at first, but they still set up some farms to tax food. Rhodesia was a couple of things. It was segregated, it was unequal, and it got a little more racist than the average late-night gaming talk. The whites ruled the economy, ruled the country, and ruled the land, seizing it from the native Africans, forcing most of them to live on reserves. Only one problem, though. Unlike these countries where the Brits came in such large numbers they dominated the country, the Brits were the vast minority in Rhodesia, about 50,000 around the 1930s compared to African numbers in the millions, leading to a country where a tiny fraction owned most of the farms, mines, businesses, land, and dollar bills.
Well, that doesn't sound like a good economy either.
Pretentious political scientist, you could say Rhodesia was an exemplary case of extractive political and economic institutions set about by an external force for their ad interim growth. Or
stop it. I need to look.
Political and economic institutions set about by an external force.
I read Why Nations Fail. How could you
for their ad interim growth. Or instead, you could say the Brits took all the nobility things to make some quick cash, whether from heavy taxes placed on native production, HUD taxes on every house, or marketing boards set up who usually took a little bonus for their hard work. Rhodesia was more unequal than a Nike sweatshop in Bangladesh, and as World War II started causing hundreds of thousands of natives to move to the cities for fancy new manufacturing jobs, tensions only rose between the two groups. The 1950s and 60s saw a rise of militant anti-government groups like the ZAPU and the NDP. This NDP, not the Canadian one. As the groups grew and people kept urbanizing, there were open calls to get rid of the Rhodesian system. And when Nyasaland declared independence in the 60s, and then Northern Rhodesia did too, both under African rule, the South wanted to join the party and declared independence from the UK in 1965, instead under a white minority rule. It was inevitable. The British Empire was seriously declining and the UK was distancing itself from them. But right after, boom, the Rhodesian Bush War started and lasted for 15 years.
Think about 1965. That wasn't that long ago. That's just so recent to get independence.
No, not that kind of Bush War. It was the Rhodesians versus the Zimbabweans, aka whites versus blacks. It obviously caused destruction, countless deaths, and embargoes. So when the war was over, won by the ZANU-PF party, the new Zimbabwe was one of the most broken places on earth. Luckily, there was one man who promised to fix Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe. The leader of ZANU-PF. Just kidding, guys. This man had no intention of making Zimbabwe a better place. Right after taking over, he killed about 20,000 political opponents and he got rid of the Rhodesian Senate. He was just a tiny bit corrupt, you know, setting up ZANU-PF allies to control newly made state-run industries, taking over marketing boards, and heavily regulating trade, so you had to buy from his party. One could call him a businessman doing business, but many others prefer the term crook. Instead of trying to get rid of these devastating ideas, he wanted to be the man running them. So obviously the old British colonists ran the hell away from this new country, taking much of the money and educated population with them.
That's what's really sad. Like even though they got kicked out eventually, it's like, well, how much did they get in between the time that they arrived and they were kicked out? It's got to be a lot, just like a lot of countries. I'm not going to name names.
Some stayed. They still had farms, mines, and childhood memories here after all. Plus, any type of foreign investment that wanted to come back to Zimbabwe was shooed away. ZANU-PF wanted to fix the nation all by itself. So any independent Zimbabwean businessman trying to start up a shop selling, I don't know, plastic lids, couldn't from the heavy subsidies given to ZANU-PF-led industries, high costs from the lack of imports, and repression for genuine fear of ZANU-PF power being questioned. By the 1990s, this economic system failed though. After the Soviets collapsed, it wasn't really cool to have a command-based economy anymore, so they accepted loans from these guys to start a journey to the free market. No!
Whoa. World Bank. Okay.
guys to start a journey to the free market. No, said the ZANU-PF supporters, who were the ones controlling all the state-led industries and getting a pretty nice paycheck for their work. So they protested, and unrest continued throughout the 1990s. During that whole time, there was an idea, a break in case of emergency type idea. What if he took all the land from the white farmers and gave it to black farmers? Nah, that's too crazy, and the debate died down. Until 1990,
he said no to that part.
Went to fight in the Second Congo War, mainly to protect Mugabe's investments in the country. Turns out that was an incredibly unpopular move, and countries cut their aid to Zimbabwe. They cut trade, they cut political ties, and most importantly, their old pals South Africa did all of this too. They were a pariah on the world stage, and it led to deindustrialization, riots over rising food prices, war veterans demanding land, and defaulting on their loans in 2000. The 2000 election in Zimbabwe was one full of violence, fraud, and likely the most important in its history. ZANU-PF won by only a slight margin with a little help from some certain...
Okay, wait. I was about to say, how did he win? Oh, wait a minute. He eliminated a lot of his political opponents, and I'm guessing he did the same with maybe people who voted against him. I mean... Yeah, 20,000 is a big amount, and it could be more. We don't know.
Gunmen.
He could have done anything if he's corrupt like that, you know?
So why not gain some popularity and maybe try that idea out? By 2000, the government started seizing white-owned land to give to the war veterans, but let's be honest, to ZANU-PF elites too. Over 3,000 of them in total, and I think this graph shows the state of the economy best. Before 2000, growing, somewhat stable. After 2000...
Well, not really. It's already decreasing here. Oh, but yeah, that's dramatic.
It really took a nosedive. Imagine you lived your whole life in the city and then I grabbed you and threw you on this piece of land and said, "Farm, boy." What would you even do? My guess is you'd be a pretty lousy farmer, and yeah, with the lack of training and dismantling white equipment and businesses, these new farmers destroyed agriculture in Zimbabwe. Food supplies halved, down 45% in the years that followed, and they couldn't just import the rest, cause, say it together, everybody hates Zimbabwe. Remember, this is a country that already lost its trade and manufacturing. All they had left was farming, and that was collapsing now too. It's kind of like when Kanye lost his family, all he had left was Adidas, and then he became a Nazi and he lost Adidas too. Just replace this interview with seizing white farms, and that's the story.
I was not ready for Kanye to pop up on the screen. It's gonna sound crazy, but maybe they should outsource their leadership somehow. Because, well, I don't know. Like, what do? You have to overturn your leader and get rid of the leader, even though he's getting rid of all of his opponents in opposition. That's got to be such a difficult place.
Businesses completely stopped investing in Zimbabwe when they realized the government could just snatch their investment from them and shut it down. Well, imagine this with farms and factories instead. And the US and EU put massive sanctions on Zimbabwe, with one of the goals seriously being to make the people revolt and overthrow the ZANU-PF government. Food became unaffordable.
That's how bad it is, though. I mean, not bad of a place, just that's how much they're struggling with that leadership.
Violence and riots in the streets, and the government ran out of money. The only way to pay the elites and veterans was to... No, don't look at that, Zimbabwe. You can do better. Production, diamonds, drug smuggling, taxes, I don't care. Anything but that. Oh, but it's so tempting. Maybe just a little bit could do some good. Cause swoosh! The government became addicted to printing money. At peak printing in late 2008, inflation was around 80 billion% monthly and 96 trillion% yearly. But honestly, they stopped measuring. It was so high that everyone was just honestly making these stats up. They printed so much money that the paper it was printed on was way more valuable than the dollar itself, leading to things like the $10 trillion bill, and the hyperinflation wiped out everybody's savings, destroyed any business's savings, and obliterated the government's savings.
This is another level. Is that a pangolin? Oh no.
The black market was the only realistic way to buy food, goods, and to find any work, with some bread reaching $20 billion in the non-black market. After the banks collapsed, they had to switch to other currencies like the South African rand and US dollar for any sort of stability. And if you think they learned from their mistakes, wrong. In 2013, these land-grabbing laws were extended to some white-owned businesses. You can imagine how that went. Today, less than 300 farms in Zimbabwe have been given back to white farmers.
What is this picture? Oh my god.
And in 2019, they brought back the Zimbabwean dollar, this time only reaching 350% inflation in 2021. So hey, kudos to them for improving. Food security is uncertain, life expectancy is low, and it's still very politically repressive. Not the best for running a country, but whether it's Brits taking African land or Zimbabweans taking white-owned land, what I can say is they knew a thing or two about how to run an economy. Of course they knew how to run an economy. Which other country has had as many trillionaires as Zimbabwe has? None.
I'm blown away a little bit. I wasn't expecting it to be that much of a struggle for them. I feel really bad, actually. I know that we have to vote our people in, but what do you do if your leadership is killing the opposition? What do you do? I would be scared to even vote. God, that is really sad. It's so scary when the wrong person is in charge. This was a really good video by Hoser. Really funny. I'm going to subscribe. It's the first video that I've had on my channel from Hoser. So if you liked his video, you could subscribe to him. I'll leave it in the description for you. Let me know if there's anything you want me to watch. And if you like my video, please subscribe to me as well. Thank you so much for watching it. It means a lot. It's really been a lot of fun as I get, you know, more active on this channel. It's just been fun. I love it. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.